Great things are rarely done alone. A special thank you to our 200th anniversary sponsors, Air Canada, Canadian Tire, Clearwater Seafoods, Lord Nelson Hotel and Suites, Michelin North America Canada Incorporated, Scotiabank, CBC, the Chronicle Herald, and the Globe and Mail. We are proud to recognize our ongoing partnerships. Thank you for your generous support.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Dalhousie University's Belong Forum and Honorary Degree Ceremony with the amazing Mark Tewksbury. I'm Stephanie Dennis, a Dalhousie student and of the Faculty of Medicine at Dal, and a member of the Dal Women's Tigers swim team. Go Tigers! Thank you all for joining us today at Citadel High. Citadel is located on the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. It is awesome to be here with all of you today. And like you, I'm very excited to hear from Mark Tewksbury, one of Canada's heroes and Olympic gold medalist. Today's honorary degree ceremony and Belong Forum are part of Dalhousie's 200th anniversary celebrations, which are happening throughout the year. This is a very special occasion for Dalhousie University and Citadel High. It's the first time that we've partnered together on something like this, hosting people from your school and the greater Halifax community. I'd like to thank, in particular, Citadel High Principal Joe Morrison for hosting with us and partnering, and everyone here for making us feel so welcome. It's also the first time that Dalhousie or any university has ever conferred an honorary degree here at Citadel High. So thank you for sharing in the excitement for our 200th year. I look forward to seeing many of you at Dal in the fall. Here on stage with me today is your fellow student, Dominic Drzowski, who will now say a few words.
Hello everyone, my name is Dominic. I'm a grade 12 student here at Citadel High and a member of the football team who will be attending Dalhousie in the fall. On behalf of all of us here at Citadel High, it's my pleasure to welcome Dalhousie University, its 200th sponsors, friends and family in the Halifax community, and our very special guest of honor, Mark Tewksbury. Mark is one of the most loved and respected Canadian athletes and an advocate for LGBTQ2+ people everywhere. How fitting is it that he's here on the International Day Against Transphobia, Homophobia, and Biphobia. This year is Dalhousie University's 200th anniversary. Turning 200 is very rare, and Dal is one of Canada's first universities to mark this milestone. Congratulations, Dal, on turning 200. We're thrilled to share in this celebration with you. In just a few moments, senior leaders from Dalhousie University will present Mark Tewksbury with an honorary degree. Then, we will hear from Dalhousie's newest honorary degree recipient as he shares his thoughts on belonging. There will be time for questions and an answer session with Mark, hosted by Tom Murphy of CBC, Dal's 200th media sponsor, followed by a reception which is open to all. So, let's begin. Please welcome to the stage Dalhousie University President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Richard Florizone, Chair of Dalhousie Senate, Dr. Kevin Hewitt, and our very special guest of honor, Mark Tewksbury.
Thank you, Stephanie and Dominic. Well, good afternoon to all of you. It's great to see all of you here and to be here at Citadel High. It's such an exciting time that Kevin and I put on our special hats for you. You can earn one too. It just takes 12 years of post-secondary education. It's wonderful to hear this tremendous energy in the room, which we enjoyed just as we were backstage. Thank you for welcoming us to this wonderful Spats Theatre and your beautiful school, and for partnering with us on the 200th anniversary event. As Dominic just shared with you, 2018 is a special year for Dalhousie as we reflect on our university's journey so far and look ahead to the future, to our third century. Our 200th year is filled with events, with programs and performances across our faculties, across our campuses, and across all of our communities, and even across the country. In fact, some of you might have noticed the gold bus in the parking lot just outside, which has arrived from Western Canada, where we reconnected with hundreds of alumni as we're conducting a coast-to-coast tour this year. From the beginning, nearly 2 centuries ago, Dal has aspired to the highest academic standards and also to be of service to our community. 2 centuries later, we've now grown from what was a little college by the sea into a national university, and the top research university in Atlantic Canada, one that we'll be so proud to welcome many of you to in the fall. But we wouldn't be there today, we wouldn't have built those 200 years of excellence without our people. Our history has been written by our people, enriched by their identities, their cultures, and their values, who they are, and also through their actions, and of course, their teaching and their scholarship. As we enter our third century at Dalhousie, we are more committed than ever to creating an environment in which all members of our community, everyone, feels welcomed, supported, safe, and respected. So all year, as part of our bicentennial celebrations, we've been conducting a Belong Forum series, where we've been asking the question, what would it take to create a world where all truly belong? Today, in addition to receiving an honorary degree from Dal, Mark, incredible, inspiring Canadian, will share his wisdom. And I know you. But first, we have now conferring an honorary that a university. And so I now call upon Dr. of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Dr. Hewitt.
Good afternoon. It is now my great pleasure to share with you some of the outstanding accomplishments of our honorary degree recipient, Mark Tewksbury. Mark, can you please stand? It has been 20 years since swimming superstar Mark Tewksbury came out publicly as gay. Some of the people in this room are likely too young to remember what a big deal it was, or to appreciate how incredibly rare it is, even today, for an elite athlete to openly declare their homosexuality. Tewksbury was the first Canadian sports hero to take this revolutionary step, one that helped pave the way for other gay jocks, as he self-identified, to show their true colors on the national and international stage. After winning an Olympic silver medal in the 4x100 meter medley relay in 1988, gold in the 100 meter backstroke, Canada's first gold medal of those games, and a come-from-behind victory, without a swim cap, I might add, that captured the national imagination. He went on to win, also, bronze in the 4x100 meter medley relay. Suddenly, he was a household name, bringing in valuable endorsements and appearing on the cover of Time magazine. Born and raised in Calgary, spending part of his childhood in Texas, Tewksbury trained at the University of Calgary and studied at the University of Calgary, later graduating from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, with a BA in political science. His athletic career highlights include 21 national titles, 7 world records, and 4 Commonwealth Games gold medals. He has been inducted into the Canadian Sports, Canadian Olympic, and International Swimming Halls of Fame. Tewksbury went on to work as an athlete representative with the International Olympic Committee, resigning in the face of corruption. He would become a vocal critic of the IOC while remaining a steadfast supporter of athletes and the power of sport. That same year, he officially came out as gay. At that point, he had already lost a 6-figure deal as a motivational speaker for a financial institution for being, quote, too openly gay. But Tewksbury felt emboldened in his activism, embarking on what would become 2 decades of advocacy and humanitarian work. Mark co-founded the athlete-led ethical sports movement OATH, which stands for Olympic Advocates Together Honorably. He served as co-president of the first World Out Games in Montreal in 2006, addressed the United Nations on the decriminalization of homosexuality, and has been a national ambassador for the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research. He is president and chair of Special Olympics Canada. Tewksbury is also co-founder of The Great Traits, a training and development company. He makes, as you would know, regular TV appearances as a host and commentator, speaks internationally, and has authored 3 books, including 2006's Inside Out, Straight Talk from a Gay Jock. Among his many honors are the Bonham Center Award for the Mark S. Bonham Center for Sexual Diversity Studies at the University of Toronto, the Governor General's Meritorious Service Medal, and being named Fondation Emergence Person of the Year in 2007. He also has honorary degrees from the University of Western Ontario and the University of Calgary. Mark Tewksbury is a consummate role model and the perfect choice for today's Belong Forum. He has parlayed the influence he earned as a sports hero to become a true humanitarian hero, inspiring so many across Canada and around the world. Therefore, in recognition of his leadership for social change and tireless advocacy nationally and internationally, I ask you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, in the name of the Senate, to bestow upon Mark Tewksbury the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
You want to get the degree? Mark Tewksbury, by virtue of the authority vested in me and in Dalhousie University, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities appertaining thereto. Congratulations, Dr. Tewksbury.
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take that picture. Great. Wonderful. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. So now we'll go.
So once again, congratulations, Dr. Tewksbury. It's so exciting to be here for this very special moment. As Dr. Tewksbury prepares to take the stage for his Belong Forum, please enjoy a short look back at some of the many amazing highlights of his career.
Good afternoon. Hello, Citadel. Hi! How are you guys? It is such an honor to be here, receiving an honorary degree. Thank you very much to Dalhousie. But even more importantly, to be here as part of the Belong Forum. 200 years of academic history is really incredible. I'm so glad you guys are celebrating. And I'm really honored to be part of this. Amazing to be doing it on May 17th, the International Day Against Homo, Trans, and Biphobia. And I'm very honored to share my voice as part of the Year of Belonging. So each of the speakers were really posed a question. The Belong Forum has really asked us to think a lot about the question, what would it take for us to create a world where we all feel like we truly belong? It's a good question. I think the notion of belonging is complicated. I think that on one hand, belonging implies community. To belong to a class, a club, a group means shared values, shared purpose. It's expansive and inspiring. On another hand, belonging implies ownership. I, you, it belongs to me, us, them. That feels more restrictive, more limited, more conditional. Belonging can create alienation. If I belong to X, let's say the United States, then I maybe can't belong to Y, North Korea. If I belong there, I don't belong here. But that can also create possibility, because if I don't belong here, it doesn't mean I can't belong somewhere else. So, where do I belong? Belonging is not a zero-sum game. It's complicated and at times contradictory. To create a world where we all feel like we truly belong, I believe starts for each of us within our own worlds, feeling like we belong here and now, no matter what. We belong because we're human, and our humanity connects us. When you strip away all the stuff, nationality, religion, gender, sexuality, and you see the person or the human first, we all belong unconditionally. It's so simple, but so hard. Because to see humanity in others, you have to first see and accept it within yourself. Great philosophers and spiritual leaders have told us how to create a world of belonging. The golden rule says, treat others as you would like to be treated. But even within that, the onus is still on us to figure it out. How do you want to be treated? Socrates said, know thyself. Easier said than done. But until we belong in our own skin, can we truly belong anywhere else? I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, as you heard in the citation. And for the first time that I found something that I really wanted to be a part of, when I was an 8-year-old kid. The Olympics were on television. That year, of all things, we hosted our one and only Summer Olympic Games. It was in 1976. It was in Montreal. And I just sat mesmerized and spellbound in front of the television. It's the first time I had ever seen the world come together through sport and peacefully. And man, did I want to be part of that. So my parents enrolled me in a swim club. And there were some ground rules and some conditions that I agreed to, but now I was part of something that I really wanted to be part of. I had a community. So while I felt belonging here, it also created tension and alienation in other parts of my life. As junior high hit, I was training before and after school, and most weekends I was away competing. And while I was really starting to miss out on being part of my group of friends at school, I started to feel distant, alienated, and left out. This feeling was exasperated by a strange awakening within that I had as I became a teenager. You heard in the video, but while my jock friends were being attracted to the girls, I was becoming attracted to them. And it was so weird. There was no language, there was a different time, nobody talked about these things. And don't get me wrong, I love women. I just don't love women like my friends did. And so it was sort of, I knew I was different. I didn't know how to talk about it. And so I just remained kind of feeling slightly isolated and confused, not sure of who I was or what was happening. It was a very different time. I felt really unsure of where I fit. I remember it was grade 8 when I came to school. I was just a few minutes late for school, which was unusual, but I think my swimming practice had gone late. I arrived at school. I could see my locker was right at the end of the hallway when you came in the doors of the school. And I could see from these 15 meters away that something was up with my locker, that the lock actually wasn't closed anymore. So it looked like somebody had actually been in there. And I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. And actually, as I pulled the lock off and opened the locker, there was the word fag right there staring me in the face in my locker. I honestly don't even know, I didn't know what that word meant. I knew it wasn't good, and I had a feeling it was probably true, whatever it was, but it was a really clear message at that moment in my life. 14 years old, I don't belong here. That was reinforced by the principal the next day when I went to see him with my parents, because of course I was horrified. I went home. I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to tell my parents what happened. My mother finally just said, please, you have to tell us what happened today. Why were you home from school when we came home from work? And finally I said, there was this ugly word on my locker, fag. And I saw my mother, all the blood just drained from her face as she just sat there completely white and looked sick to her stomach. So when we went to see the principal the next day to figure out what was going on, I know he did the best that he could do at that time. These were tough issues back in the 70s that no one was really talking about. But his advice, it would probably be best if you changed schools, sent a further message. 3 days into the new school, it's all it took. You guys know how it works, the high school hotline. Somebody at that school knew somebody at my old school, and from that moment forward, I was the fag from Cedarbrae. That was the recurring narrative of my school years. You're not like us. I didn't fit the normal conditions, heterosexual norm to be accepted. I never again felt like I belonged in school, which made belonging in my swim club that much more important. I'd go to great lengths to fit in. Not lengths, swimming. I just thought of that myself. Anyway, good one. I worked really hard. I excelled. But on the same level, I knew that belonging was conditional, that if my secret got out, I'd once again face rejection and alienation. So I played the game. But as I got better and rose up through the ranks, becoming a national champion, Canadian record holder, eventually a world record holder, the schism between belonging and not belonging became harder for me to reconcile. I can belong as long as I deny myself. So what kind of belonging is that? My sense of belonging depended on others' opinions. I was living my life literally from the outside in. About 18 months to go before the Olympics, the Barcelona Olympics, life forced me to get real. I had this incredible breakthrough at the World Championships. In my individual races, I was often 4th or 5th, which is so tough. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you get ready for the medal ceremony, and 4th to 8th, you pile through your tracksuit on the floor, and so you always miss the podium. So my goal was to make the podium at these World Championships before I got to the Olympics in Barcelona. In the morning rounds, I qualified in 2nd place for the 100-meter backstroke. So it looked like if I could just do that same thing again in the evening, I would win myself a medal. The favorite was a world record holder. His name was Jeff Rouse from the United States. And not for a minute did I think that I could beat Jeff, but I hoped I could hold off the rest of the field for the silver medal. The 100-meter backstroke's a funny race because you're literally going backwards and you can't see the competition unless you're ahead of them. So I could see the rest of the field in the race, but I couldn't see Jeff because he was ahead of me, obviously world record holder. But with 25 meters to go, I'll never forget, as my right arm and hand came out of the water, it was exactly even with the swimmer on this side, the world record holder, Jeff Rouse. I remember thinking, relax, relax. Oh my God, you could win. Relax, relax. And stroke for stroke, hit the wall and looked up to the scoreboard. My time was 55.29. It was a personal best. Jeff swam 55.23 to win. So Jeff won by 6/100ths of a second, which is less than a fingernail. You actually can't see it with the naked eye. And true story, just like I did 2 days ago, I cut my nails before that race. I was like, what was I thinking? Anyway, that's a whole other story. But suddenly I was in this position. It seemed like this dance that I was playing of belonging and not belonging, reconciling who I was kidding myself that it wasn't impacting my performance. I felt like I was still able to be my best, so my secret should remain my secret. But then something unforeseeable happened. 6 months later, Jeff and I had a rematch. And where in the race I was kind of expecting to catch him like I had at the World Championships the whole time, it never happened. I remember in that race I swam exactly the same time I had at the World Championships, 55.29. But Jeff swam 53.98 and dropped 1.2 seconds off of the time that we had swam at the World Championships and smashed the world record. From the time I was about some of your age, 16, until I was 23, I swam 4 to 6 hours a day. I improved 1 or 2 tenths of a second each year, which was considered good because I was improving. But if you added up 7 years, it was 1.2 seconds. That's the amount I had to now drop in less than 10 months if I wanted to contend with Jeff Rouse for that Olympic medal. So my life was turned very much upside down, but it forced me to face myself. And in all my years of training, I had followed the synchronized swimming team that were the world champions and Olympic champions. They also trained in Calgary. And synchronized swimming is one of these deceptive sports that looks exceptionally easy when it's at the Olympics because it's perfection. You have 8 women doing the same routine for 4 minutes, not out of sync usually for even half a second if they do it right. And I was in awe of this team, but their specialty was underwater technical training. 30% of my race was underwater, and I spent less than 1% of my time working on it because I was just so bad. I'd start in lane 4 and kick, 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 and pop up in lane 8. I couldn't even swim straight. Okay. There's a few groaners in here. Okay. But that swimming coach had retired. Her name was Debbie Muir. But I ran into her at an event in Calgary, and I asked if she would consider coming out of retirement to coach me. I'll never forget asking her that, and I said, there's 3 caveats. A, I have no money, I can't pay you. B, I have no time, I'm already swimming 6 hours a day. And 3, I'll have no support, because if my teammates find out I'm training with a synchronized swimming coach, my life is over. Like, hi, Mark. Anyway, so she said, listen, I don't need to be paid. We'll find a way to make it work, but you have to tell your swimming coach. So I got buy-in, and I started to work with this incredible woman that first of all started to teach me the technical aspect of my sport. But because she created an environment where she wanted feedback, she wanted me to talk and share in the conversation with her, slowly over time, I started to feel really safe. And in fact, we actually started to become really good friends. And at some point leading up to the Olympics, I knew that if I was going to win, I had to bring all of me to the competition. I had to somehow find a way to reconcile this energy that was fighting on the inside, figuring out if I belonged or not belonged or where I belonged. And so the only way for me to reconcile that was to tell somebody the truth, to be honest. And that person was Debbie Muir, the synchronized swimming coach, because she created the space where I really, really, for one of the first times in my life, felt I truly belonged. I'll never forget the day I decided to tell her. We went down to a restaurant in Calgary, Debbie, synchronized swimming is a lot of music playing, and she hits a thing for a beat of 4 that goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So her ears aren't the best, I just have to say, after years of doing that. And I remember sitting down at this restaurant and saying to her, Debbie, I have something to say to you. And she said, I think I might know what it is. And I said, you tell me. And she said, no, you need to tell me. And I said, it's the first time I'd ever said it out loud. Debbie, I'm gay. And it was kind of soft. And she went, what? And I went, I'm gay. And it was like, gay, gay, gay. And she sort of, she heard it, and she kind of recoiled for a second, and she got tears in her eyes. And I thought, oh no. The reason I had never told anybody was fear of rejection, fear of losing my livelihood, fear of not belonging. She just took a second, composed herself, and said, I can't imagine how hard it's been for you. You have my support 110%. We're going to make this happen. She was an amazing woman. With that behind me, I spent my last few months getting ready for the Olympics and started to see improvements like I'd never seen in my life. By the time I got to the games, I swam on day 6. Canada had not won a medal yet when I woke up on the morning of day 6. We'd win a judo medal later in the afternoon, but I would go back to the pool at 8 o'clock that evening and swim in the final for the men's 100-meter backstroke. Before you go out to swim at the Olympics, you're marshaled into a room called the Ready Room. And the Ready Room is basically 4 walls, 8 chairs, and a door. And you sit in there for the last 30 minutes with your 7 competitors. And it is so intense. Everybody's staring at each other and jumping around. The Americans, they have such depth of field, there's usually 2 of them. They'll even talk about you, like, Tewksbury doesn't look good. It's like, really? I can hear you, and I'm feeling good, and whatever. All this is going on. But I remember taking a minute before marching out into that stadium and thinking, there's the best swimmer from Cuba and Germany and Britain and America and Japan and France. Every one of these guys had trained tens of thousands of hours to be here, just like me. Every one of these guys wanted to win this race, just like me. But in that moment, where being gay my entire athletic career had been a liability, I wanted nobody to know. In this moment, it became my greatest strength, because I looked at these 7 guys and I thought to myself, what makes me different? And in the best possible way, I thought, I'm the fag. It's true, and I own it. And I felt this power go, I was like, calm down, calm down. I went out there, swam the 100-meter backstroke, dropped 1.2 seconds from my personal best, swam 53.98 seconds, and won Canada's first gold medal at the Barcelona Olympics. Woo! So, I mean, it's funny. If someone dropped 1.2 seconds today, I think they'd be like, you know, performance-enhancing drugs. That was just gay power, baby. Gay power. No, it was actually belonging power. It was because I saw the difference that one person made in my world. She created this space where I felt I belonged. I tapped into all of my resources and made a 7-year improvement in less than 10 months. Even though I saw what Debbie was able to do for me, I wasn't ready yet to be that difference maker for others. The world was very, very different back in 1992. There was no Will and Grace even the first time. There was no Ellen. I think even Elton John was married to a woman. Sorry, that's a little joke. Okay. But suddenly, as you heard earlier, it propelled me into a national spotlight. I had contracts as a star athlete, but within each one of these contracts was something called a morality clause. If I brought disdain, public ill will, any negativity to any of the companies that were my sponsors, then I was liable. I had to pay them back the full amount that they'd paid me plus damages. And believe it or not, in 1992, being gay was something that could trigger a morality clause. So I belonged. I was celebrated, but it was conditional and it was very, very complicated. At the height of my fame after the Olympics, I've never felt more alone. I belonged to everyone in a way. Canada had kind of claimed me as a national hero, but I was deeply uncomfortable in my own skin. Through this conflict, something in me had to change, and it did. It started to shift what was important to me. My need to belong was superseded by my longing to just be. My need to belong was superseded by my longing to just be me, myself, authentically, honestly. But before I could create a world where we all felt we could belong, I had to create that world for myself. I remember going to a movie at that time. What's Love Got to Do with It? It's a Tina Turner biopic. And sometimes just random things will inspire us to do big, big things. And in this movie, Tina Turner's suffering in a horrendous domestic violent relationship. And at some point, she just jumps out of a car, runs away from her husband, and decides to start her entire life over with nothing. But she said, I'd rather have myself and start with nothing than keep up this charade that I'm living in. Something about that movie spoke to me. I cried for hours after I saw it. I started this little mantra, I Tina, I Tina. She was so strong and powerful. And so I followed her lead. And at the height of everything that I had, my endorsements, my fame, I left it all behind. And I decided to immigrate to Australia, the other side of the world, as far as I could possibly get from Canada, where I could still go back to university in an English-speaking country and finish my degree. It was so far away. I bought a one-way ticket, and I finished my political science degree. I found different groups to belong to down under. I had study groups. For the first time in my life, I had openly gay friends. I had Australian friends, but not sport and not Canada, because at that time, I can belong here in Australia, but not there in Canada. 2 years into my duty in Australia, it was 1996, I received a call from the head of the Canadian Olympic Committee that wanted to nominate me as an athlete commission member of the International Olympic Committee. It was a tough call for me because from the time I was that 8-year-old kid, the Olympics had such an allure. But the Olympics made me feel so much on so many levels like I didn't belong. And now that I'd come this far in Australia, I wasn't willing to go back without being honest. Again, my longing to be is even more important than ever at that point, outweighing the need to belong even to the Olympic movement. But I decided to share with Carol Ann Letheren, that was her name, the head of the Olympic Committee, that I was gay. She said she didn't have a problem at all with my sexuality. So I actually thought I could have it all. Belong to sport, belong to the Olympic movement, belong to myself, be honest, open, and true. So I decided to move back. It was about 2 weeks being back in Canada that I learned that Carol Ann had no problem with my sexuality. She just thought everyone else would. So she ordered me not to tell anyone. It'll be better for everyone, she said. I'll never forget, it was like being back in the principal's office, but worse. This time, you belong to us, and we'll keep you, but only on our terms. As much as I wanted to belong, to make it work, I'd come too far. I spent a couple of years traveling the world, evaluating Olympic bids, meeting world leaders, but I never felt like I belonged. In fact, I felt fraudulent, like a lie, which is what forced me to take the step to create a world where I felt I belonged. It was December 15th, 1998, long before it was on the public radar, especially for an athlete. I came out publicly. As you heard, it was the first time a sports hero in Canada had declared their sexuality, homosexuality. But it was so significant. Instead of being chosen to belong, told I belonged, trying to belong, I chose to honor myself and figure out for myself where I belonged, which was when my life changed forever. Where I belonged became my choice, made from the inside out, not from the outside in. Sure, my announcement offended many, especially in sport, but I never felt alienated because I always and finally had me. In some ways, I've been really lucky. I've seen and lived through real progress in society. But get this, for the first 30 plus years of my life, because I was who I was, and because I loved who I loved, I was on the wrong side of morality. I didn't belong, according to many, many people. Then laws changed. Society progressed. And as gay marriage became legalized, suddenly I was on the right side of morality. Now I belong. But here's the thing. I didn't change. I was the same all the way through it. So how could I be bad and good all at the same time? It spoke to me. And I realized at that point, belonging is not up to what society says. You can't tell me if I belong or not. It's up to me. It's my choice. So shortly after I came out, the International Olympic Committee was exposed for deep corruption with the Bid City process. I chose to step down and to leave the movement entirely. I stepped away from all of my posts internationally because I thought this wasn't something that I wanted to belong to. I chose to support the LGBTQ2S sport world because it included human rights, conferences, agendas that made a difference for millions of people. I chose to support Special Olympics because it made a difference for people with intellectual disability and Down syndrome. I chose to be chef de mission for the 2012 Canadian Olympic team competing in London because I wanted to create the environment for today's athletes to succeed. One of my athletes from that team, Rosie Kassar, was a rhythmic gymnast. And she came out after the games. And when she came out, I was kind of sad that I thought she hadn't felt comfortable enough to come out to me during the Olympics. But I had it all wrong. When I got to meet with her after, she said to me, No, Mark, I didn't come out because I didn't have to. I felt like I belonged because I had an openly gay person leading the team. For me, that was the greatest success of my entire career. What would it take for us to create a world where we all feel like we truly belong? I think it starts with us, with each of us, knowing who we are, seeing and accepting our own humanity that leads to being comfortable in our skin and giving us a sense of belonging that comes from the inside out. That comfort makes others comfortable. And just as Debbie Muir, the synchronized swimming coach, did for me, creates a space that is safe for another person to feel empowered enough to be authentic, to be themselves, and to feel a sense of belonging within them and within the world. Hopefully, as we keep looking at this issue of what will it take for us all to feel like we belong, we move the conversation further. So instead of looking at what it would take to belong, maybe we can look at what kind of world would we all want to belong to. And I think that starts right here at Citadel High and Dal. Thank you so much for having me. Woo! Thank you. Thanks, guys. Come on.
Thank you, Dr. Tewksbury. How's that sounding?
Good. Thank you, guys. Woo! Okay. You want to go?
That was amazing stuff. Mark, let's go. They've got some comfy chairs
Okay,
first here. Let's go get comfortable. You pick the chair you like.
Sure.
My name is Tom Murphy. I'm the host of CBC Nova Scotia News for Halifax here, and I'm delighted to be part of this today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to do this. And it's such an amazing story, and Mark loves these settings. He's told me before. He loves the Q&A. He loves the questions, and that's where you folks come in. We want you to ask lots of questions if you can. We're going to do it in kind of a fun way today. We have a catch box. Here's the thing. We get to throw it around the room a little bit, which is a lot of fun. So put your hand up. If you want to ask a question, we're going to biff the box at you. No, just kidding. We're going to gently toss it to you, and you're going to get to ask the question. 2 rules. You can't throw it up on the stage and hit us. Second rule is you got to give it back at the end of the show, okay? All right. All right, so maybe so put your arms up if you want to ask a question, and Mark, sorry, you want to say something there?
No, that's okay. We got our first question already.
Well, maybe okay. Do you have one there? Okay, very good. I'll start with one first.
Okay.
I mean, so much of that speech is so interesting, and we could mine so much of it, because so much of your life has been sports, and the sports world has been criticized over decades, really, for accepting homosexuals. Is it fair to say that the sports world is still a little bit behind the rest of society when it comes to that acceptance, that belonging?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, for sure. I think a lot of progress has been made recently in Canada. We still don't have an openly gay hockey player ever in the history of hockey, even retired athlete. So I think there might have been one hockey player at some point, somewhere along the way. It's the million-dollar riddle of why this is the case. I think that sport by its nature is rule-bound, it's traditional, slow to change, and so that permeates a lot of the culture. I will say that huge inroads have been made. The Canadian Olympic Committee now has one team. It's really promoting diversity in schools across the country. So lots of good stuff, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that for sure sport remains behind the rest of society's progressive curve.
Let's hope that changes soon. All right, the box is about to be tossed here to somebody in the third row, a nice safe distance. All right, give it a go there. Have a question.
What?
It's Mike.
That's right, you're being amplified.
So confused. Oh, it's in the box.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised.
Maybe my explanation wasn't clear enough.
Yeah, I just thought it was a box. When it comes to a lot of sports, trans people who are trying to get involved often have a lot of issues, because going into the team that you identify with, you'll often be pushed away, but going into the team with the gender that you were assigned as at birth, often people will be pushed away for saying like, oh, it's not fair because you're taking testosterone, so that means you're like obviously going to do better than other people. What's your opinion on that sort of thing that's going on quite a lot that I've found, like even in high schools?
Thanks for the question. I think that it's the trans movement is really pushing sport, because sport has been so binary. It's been male-female. And that's just, the world is a different reality today. Between sexual identity, sexual expression, gender identity, gender expression, I think there's like 37 different varieties of the typical binary male-female. We are looking at it in sport. I'm now a director of the Olympic Committee, so I'm actually back at the table, and some of these issues are coming to us, and we're really, really taking it super seriously and trying to figure out what is the best way forward. All kinds of misperceptions out there. Often a man transitioning to become a woman has less testosterone than an actual natural woman because of all the hormones and things that are happening, and vice versa. We make all kinds of assumptions about testosterone levels and strength and power that are actually being debunked with some research. So it's early days. I say to the trans movement, it's a little bit like the gay movement 40 years ago, where unfortunately you're the trailblazers, you're on the front row. It doesn't mean justice is going to happen immediately, but it will never happen if you don't keep going that road. So we're on it.
I was backstage while you were, and please put your hand up if you have another question, by the way, and hopefully you do. I was backstage listening to your speech. It was dark back there, but I think I jotted the line down that probably stood out the most for me in your speech. My need to belong was suppressed by my need to be just me. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that seems to be the question, that you have to be able to know what the issue is. I guess you have to get to that question to be able to ask it yourself so that you can then answer it. So tell me about that moment.
Well, I think it's, anybody ever felt alone in a relationship here? Where you're with somebody, but you're just not. That's how it felt. It felt like I was in this group, but I was lonelier than I'd ever been, because there was a little voice in my head that kept saying, if you only knew who I was. So it was just blocking me from ever really feeling like I belonged anywhere. And that was kind of my hypothesis for this whole presentation today, was that if you don't feel like you belong in your own skin, then it's very difficult to create the environment for other people to do so, or to feel like you belong anywhere. So I really boiled it down to sort of that need that I had. And I just like the word belong. Belong, longing to be. And there's this interconnectedness to it. And I think that too often we want to belong on the outside, but I think that starts by learning and longing to be ourselves.
Nicely put. All right, we have an arm up here again, a few rows back here. Here comes the box. We're being very gentle with it. There we go. Okay, question away.
Okay, so you mentioned how when you were in grade 8 and you had the word fag written on your locker, you mentioned how you didn't know what that word meant. Did you know anything about, did you have any prior knowledge about being gay or anything like that before then? And did you figure it out after that incident, or how did you figure it out, kind of thing?
Yeah, so imagine back, there's no internet, there's no answering machines, there's just you call somebody, that was it. So there was nowhere to go get information. So until I got to university, I would just never even, imagine going to a library and trying to ask the librarian, do you have any literature on this word fag? Or, I just didn't know where to go. I'd heard other slang words, and so I knew what they were meaning by it. I knew that it was it was not a compliment, but I didn't know exactly what it was. But I did figure it out, yeah, of course, I slowly. Where I really, really got empowered was when I went to Australia. I studied political science, and they had a gender and politics course. And I actually learned so much of the vernacular around the homosexuality and the sexual liberation movements that it was extremely empowering, because I suddenly had a language to go with how I was feeling on the inside. But that took many years. That took a good 10 years of my life for that journey of understanding to happen. Follow up?
Yeah, go ahead. Follow up?
Oh, the box is gone.
So do you have any suggestions? Now there's the internet, so you can look it up. But do you have any suggestions on how somebody could get information from a real person and try to understand themselves by getting help from others?
Yeah, absolutely. Some mentoring or someone to connect to. Absolutely. And I wish I had a local hotline or something to call. I should have had that coming in. What is it? Youthproject.org?
No, it's an organization that's local and it helps queer youth in Halifax.
Okay, so Youth Project
Who needs a catch box?
So that's the beauty of today's world, right? There are actual ways that people are coming together not to feel so isolated and alone, and to educate and to build communities. So Youth Project, way to go, guys. I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah.
Youth Project!
Well placed.
It's great.
Well timed.
Okay.
I have
Thank
a
you.
quick question for you. You talked in your speech there about how after you came out losing a six-figure deal. Did you have, how many moments, did you have moments where you thought, was this a mistake? Did you begin to second guess yourself at all, or were you beyond that point at that?
I was beyond it, but here's the interesting thing. When I lost the six-figure deal, I wasn't out. I was too openly gay because I dyed my hair blonde. Really? Anyway, but that's what it was. That was enough for people to go, oh my God. But interesting, the person that declined my contract was a closeted gay person within the financial institution. So I just was too much, I think, of I was the next generation. I was on the verge of coming out. I wasn't out yet. But I think that was sort of the interesting, the internalized homophobia of that person was what canceled that contract.
It speaks a lot to the pressure that so many people feel, really, even like-minded people, that can happen. Okay, let's see okay, we have a hand up there. Who's got the box now? There we go, right over there. How about right there?
Here.
There we are.
Good catch.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. What do you think, like, as a school, Citadel could do to make people feel more like they belong or more like they're accepted in sport and in other aspects of, like, the school?
Well, you guys get to decide that for yourselves, actually. You get to decide what kind of place you want to be. Do you want to be a place that honors each other, welcomes each other, actually has everybody contribute? Or do you want to be a place that plays people against each other, makes people feel alone and isolated, and have the worst imaginable human experience going to school? Because you set that tone. You set that tone in the hallways. If somebody is being bullied in any way, you're no longer just a bystander if you see that. It was June Callwood, a famous social justice activist in Toronto, that's famous for saying, if you see an act of injustice, you're no longer a spectator, you're now a participant. And it's up to you at that moment to decide what to do with it. So every single one of you has the power to create a space, to stop hatred, to stop bullying. It takes courage. It takes courage to stand up to the bully. But it's amazing when people stand up to the bully, how quickly bullying starts to dissipate and disappear. So I leave it to you guys. It's in your hands. You know, maybe even right now, somebody that maybe isn't being treated fairly. Do you keep that? Do you allow that to happen on your watch? I hope not.
If you could tell your 16-year-old self something, would that be sort of the message you would want someone to tell you or to be shared with you at that time?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's so easy to say now. I wish I somehow had the more courage to stand up. I just didn't. I just thought the answer was to run and avoid and hide and let my power be stolen away. For sure, I would tell my 16-year-old self, it does get better, because it absolutely does. You're not alone. But I do think the great thing about today's technology and social media, it cuts both ways. It can be extremely vicious if it's on the attack, but it can be exceptionally community-based and welcoming if you're on that side of it too, so that people don't have to feel alone.
Okay, we're going to take another question. A lot of them are coming from this side of the room, but we're going to, where's there, right there, maybe over in the other staff. There we go, right there, that woman in the white. Maybe you just pick one. How about that? All
right. Okay, so was there ever like a point, like when you did come out or like through all your like experiences, that you wanted to go back to those people that like called you those words and like made you feel alone and just tell them how like they made you feel, or like any like you want to tell them like how they made you feel and like say like that's like wrong and stuff?
Interesting question. Yes, kind of. Well, here, I actually received an email from one of the guys that wrote Fag in the Locker 15 years later. And he said he didn't even know what the word meant. He was just writing it to be mean. But he didn't know that I was gay, but you know, it hit extra hard for me. There's been moments, I don't need revenge. I don't need to go back and say, look at what happened. Sometimes it just happens. One of those guys that was the worst bully is a cashier at a liquor store in Calgary now, and I saw him a little while ago, and he's like, your life turned out pretty good. I went, sure did. So sometimes success is the best revenge.
Do we have any questions over here at all? Any questions here? Here's one in the front row. Someone in the front row here's got one?
Yeah, there's a bunch in the back here.
There's some in the back.
Okay, go to the back and we'll come back to the front in a minute. Okay,
Thank you guys for so many good questions.
But that must feel good for you, because here you are on this stage, and you've been on so many stages, telling your story, a very personal story. They're hearing it.
Yeah.
Those people who were in your circle back then are definitely hearing it. And you're not only probably changing their thoughts and their opinion on what happened, but also so many others. That has got to feel good.
Thanks. And guys, like, it's really, you got to know, even now, I'm a 50-year-old man, it's still very unusual to share such intimate stories. I never imagined growing up that I would share my personal life so publicly. It just happened that because I was able to speak and because that opportunity came, I did. But it's still kind of hard to go back and talk about Fag in the Locker, and it was not a pleasant time in my life.
We're certainly glad you're talking about it today. Okay, we have a question up the back there.
I have a question and a comment.
We have a time limit.
Okay, comment.
Go ahead.
For 50-year-old, you're very handsome.
You may want him to take a little longer to...
Did you hear that? I hope you're on the football team. No, I mean, that's awesome that a guy can say that to me in today's world. Yeah, I love that. Anyway, sorry, question?
And for my question,
Yes.
do you think it would have been easier to come out if you weren't a sports player?
I don't think it would have really made a big difference back in 1976. But the sport, strangely, listen, guys, like, for as difficult as sport is, it's also an amazing environment. It's an environment where it's like the campaign is for the hockey. If you can play, you can play. And so I wouldn't have survived if there wasn't sport. Let me be clear. As difficult as sport is in that environment, it was the place that absolutely saved my life, because I had a place where I could excel, where I was accepted, where all the same characteristics that made me identified as gay at school made me enthusiastic, and people kind of turned the other way at swimming because I was great at what I did. So I'm grateful to sport. I don't think it would have made a negative difference. It actually made a positive one at that point in my life.
Sport can teach so many lessons, can it? It's quite something. All right, do we have another question on that side of the room before we come back down to the front here? Got a hand up there anywhere? Oh, right here. Right. Keep it another step to your left. Right there. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
When and how did you come out to your family?
Oh, that's a great question. I cut that out of the speech, actually. And that's a little bit of this interesting conundrum with belonging. Because the minute that I chose to belong more to me, it meant I had to start to share my truth with other people. And the first people I told were my parents. And it did not go very well. My parents are from a very small town in Alberta. My father went silent and said, "I still love you," which is awesome. My mother really lost it. She was from a very small town, very concerned. Her comments were more, I take after my mother. My mother looks at the world from the outside in as well. And she was very concerned about what the neighbors would think. She just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, "Mom, you used to come home and show me the shoes you bought. Like, didn't you have a clue? Like, come on, right? Like, moms don't do that to their teenage sons in sport." But anyway, it was somehow a real shock to her, which just goes to show sometimes people see what they want to see. Now, my mother has come full circle. My father, unfortunately, died very young. He died almost 20 years ago. But he died just before I came out, actually. And I actually think that was probably one of the reasons I could come out, because I think I couldn't have done it while my father was still alive. There was something blocking me. But my mom now is the biggest fan, and I'm 10 years with my partner, and she keeps pushing it for us to get married. So that's a great thing, full circle. So people take time.
What's your advice, and there's some young people in the room who may be asking and looking at this very issue themselves, what would your advice be to a young person who is trying to tell their parents? Is there any wisdom you can impart there on that?
This is such nice, light questions on the. You know what? I think what's really important. It's an interesting world. I mean, I think that people are much more open to the vast diversity of experience we have as human beings, and I think the most important thing that is, if you are starting to feel like you might identify as something other than the norm, that you have a support group, whatever that is. You know, Debbie was my rock, so that when I told my parents and I was rejected, I had a place to go back to. And I think you've got to have that ally and a really solid base before you can start to branch out and share with people, just for your own sound mind. Yeah.
Okay, nicely done. All right, another question there. Where's the box now? There we go. In the front row here, I guess.
All right, Mark, it was a while ago where I was a grade 10 student in the former version of this high school, and was inspired by your performance in Barcelona. And having heard you today and having heard you previously over the last number of years, have been inspired in a much different way. And I think it's clear you're a change maker. So as I see all these young people behind us, what's your advice to them as to how they can make positive change?
Good question. Well, you know, the funniest thing is, you make a difference just by showing up and being a good person. It's that simple. doing the right thing, taking a stand for somebody when you see an injustice. But even starting within, get to know yourselves. You're at this amazing time in life where you're getting education at high school, you're going to move into university sooner than later, or other things. And there's so much possibility. But I think that it really starts with understanding who you are, finding things that you have an affinity to, and standing up for them. I think it's really important to stand up for the things that we believe in. That's why I'm here. I'm a change maker just because I stood up. It wasn't some huge, big act. It was just saying I'm gay, or how can I help you? Or, that athlete, John Fennell, in that video, all I did was offer to talk to John because I had an experience that I thought that he could relate to. So if you feel like you've got an experience somebody else can relate to, you can help somebody else move them forward, just sharing your story, being there, it's simple, but sometimes it's enough to make a massive difference. Debbie Muir, that coach, just by saying, tell me how you feel, invited me to join the conversation and created a space where I felt safe. So it doesn't have to be huge and grandiose, but I do think that every single person has the chance to make some kind of change in your life positively, especially for somebody else.
Okay, where's the box right now? Okay, I had visions of us throwing it across the room, but we have a question over there. How far can we throw that? Just give it a good go there. Lyle, give it a good toss.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. I heard them announce earlier that there's tryouts for the softball team. You may want to check that out.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Question.
Hi. So first, I just wanted to thank you for coming here. You're an extremely awesome speaker, and I think all of us benefited from your openness today. So I'd just like to start off by saying that.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yay. But my question was, in Pyeongchang, we saw that Canada hosted the Pride House.
Yes.
But in Sochi, I don't think that there was any sort of Pride House or anything like that. So
definitely not.
do you think in the future, because, for example, Russia has had so many human rights violations and also gay and other identity sort of violations, do you think in the future, if there is an Olympics hosted there, Canada maybe should not necessarily boycott, but do something to show we want to support our athletes that are queer or are gay, and we don't want to be supporting that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for being so informed about Pride House and the Olympics and what's been going on. There wasn't a Pride House in Sochi, but that was amazing, actually. That worked out in our favor because it became a lightning rod for conversation about why there wasn't one because of the climate in Russia. I would go a step further, and I think that we should shame international sport leaders for giving Olympics to countries like Russia. I just think that has nowhere in the Olympic world. It's very difficult because Russia is a very strong powerhouse in sport and a big player in the Olympic movement. But I personally, I'm on the Canadian Olympic Committee. I'm trying to put pressure upwards on the International Olympic Committee. Believe it or not, the International Olympic Committee was going to allow Russia to walk in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics they were banned in behind the Russian flag at the closing ceremonies in Pyeongchang. We fought and fought and fought, and thankfully, because there were 2 more positive tests in Pyeongchang from Russians, that didn't happen. But the IOC reinstated Russia the very day after the Olympics. So there's still a lot of work to go at that international level. I never believe in boycotts. I think the only people that suffer from a boycott are the athletes. But yes, 1,000%, we need to keep putting pressure on and ask sport leaders to do the right thing.
So is progress being made? Pride House is an example of progress?
Yes, for sure. Pride House is absolutely an example. I mean, there is now the language of LGBTQ2S in sport. It isn't separated anymore. A lot of university athletic trainers, a lot of national team coaches are really becoming sensitized to this whole subject. Get this, I was at the Olympic Committee meetings last November. There were 400 sport leaders from Canada, including the head of bobsleigh and weightlifting and boxing and, some hockey and football. And they did a 3-hour session by EGAL Canada on LGBTQ2S education. And at one point, they had all of the sport leaders stand up and say, L is for, and all the sport leaders went, lesbian. B is for bisexual. It was like, oh my God, is this happening? Like, so there is huge progress being made, but it takes some time to trickle down, to change attitudes on the playing field, but really some great work is being done.
Fantastic. All right, we're starting to run out of time here, but we got time for at least another question. Who's got a hand up there? The box, maybe you can gently hand it over to the guy in the red cap there to the woman in front of you there who's got her hand up. Keep your hand up there. There we go. Okay. Teamwork. Okay. I think you might have had a question before.
Yes.
Do you? Back for round 2. Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Am I right saying that you work with Special Olympics, like in some sort?
That I was what?
The Special Olympics?
Oh, yes. I'm the chair of Special Olympics. Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want to be wrong about that and then ask you a question on something you don't know about.
Sure.
So I just wanted to first thank you for that, because my sister's in the Special Olympics programs, and two of my sisters are. And
so for people that don't know, Special Olympics is for people with intellectual disabilities or Down syndrome that use sport as an amazing community builder.
Yes, it's really helpful for them. Two of my sisters have autism, so they were both doing that. So
amazing.
It's really really helpful for them. But my question was more so what made you get involved with not only LGBTQ plus things, but stuff like Special Olympics and other organizations that are just for change?
Sure. Special Olympics in particular, I've always felt like sport is an amazing vehicle for all kinds of things, and for social change, for sure. The Special Olympics athletes, really for me, I was introduced in 1988. I'd come back from the Olympics in Seoul. I had a silver medal on a relay. You guys would know this history, but there was a runner named Ben Johnson. It was a very famous athlete for Canada that was caught for steroids. He won the 100-meter sprint. And it was such a shock to have a Canadian caught for steroids, because I remember a reporter going, "Did you hear what happened to Ben?" And I so didn't even think of steroids. I was like, did he get hit by a car? Like, what happened? And so I was really, really depressed after the Olympics. I came back to a Canada that was very disappointed with the Olympic team. We all got sort of painted with the same brush that Ben did in a way. There was this dark cloud over the Olympic movement in Canada. I went to a Special Olympics competition where the spirit of the athletes with an intellectual disability was so overwhelming, it connected me back into why I loved sport in the first place and helped me keep swimming 4 more years to win that gold. So I have a very special place in my heart for Special Olympics. It's the spirit of sport that they really capture, and for any professional or Olympic athlete that's kind of lost that because of the intensity of competition, it's great to be reminded of why we started in the first place.
All right, thank you for that question. We're going to squeeze one more in here quickly. Who's got one last question?
A good one.
The honor goes
not
to...
Not that there's not a good question.
Who's got a...
We got one over here.
Someone over here.
Yeah, someone feels ready. I like it.
Haven't had many questions
awesome.
so far today. Okay,
here we go.
All
whoa,
right.
Good job.
Go ahead.
So you had said that after you came out publicly in 1998, that's correct?
Yep.
I was just wondering, did you find that there were a lot of people reaching out to you with support in confidence that they were unable to do so in publicly because of the climate at the time?
Excellent question. You asked earlier if I lost things. I don't know what I lost because people just stopped asking. They just kind of disappeared, and work carried on. I was prepared never to work again. But to your question, 100%. And in fact, I've been lined up 6 times to be there for the first hockey player announcement. That's why I picked on hockey earlier. For the first announcement of an NHL player that was going to come out, and it always, the person got too scared when it actually came on the day. But 100%, I've had athletes from all walks of life come and share in me and confide. And I hold that really dear. That's something that I'll never talk about publicly, but thanks for the question.
All right, well, I think we're going to have to wrap up the Q&A session right now due to time. It's been fascinating listening to you. I know sometimes I've heard you say you blush when people say you're a Canadian icon, and humanitarian and all that. But, you're showing us today that we're all humanitarians in our own way. We have to be. It's great to have someone like you leading the way. It's just been fascinating listening to you today, and thanks very much for your comments.
Thank you so much. So good to sit hi in Dalhousie. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. You guys just don't want to go back to school, right? You're like, thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Okay, before you go, Mark, we're going to call Dominique and Heather back on again here just
Great,
for a couple
great.
of wrap things up.
Great, great, great.
Sorry, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Dom. Oh, guys, sorry.
Okay, guys, we just hang on a real quick second here. You just hold your seats for a quick second. We have a presentation and just to wrap things up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tewksbury, for that. That was amazing. You've given us so many insights to consider as we reflect on how we can work to create a world where we all feel like we truly belong. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Dominic.
So I know you're really excited for the reception outside, but one quick thing. On behalf of Dalhousie and Citadel High here, I'm really excited to present Dr. Tewksbury a couple tokens of our appreciation. The first is a wool blanket made from the wool from sheep at the Faculty of Agriculture at Dalhousie.
Wow.
It's really quite
How
beautiful.
awesome is that?
And the second is from a student here at Citadel High named Megan McCauley, who made this framed piece of artwork for you.
Oh. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Really thank you.
Wow. Oh my God, thank you. You painted me 25 years ago. Mwah, thank you. That's good. Okay, sure.
You want help? Are you good?
Sure, I'm good. Okay. Is the student here who painted this? Is the student here who did this? Where
Megan?
are you?
Megan?
Megan, come on. We'll see you.
Come on
Come on up. Thanks. That's so awesome. Will you have a picture with me? Come on up on stage. Oh, sorry, just around here. Just around the stairs on the side there. I'm just going to get her with a picture. Like, she did such a great job. That's so sweet. And see the rainbow colors on the ribbon? Very thoughtful. Very thoughtful. Thank you, Megan. Thanks for that. Get a picture with you, okay? Here we go, right here. Hold that for me. Thank you for doing that. I love it. It's going on my wall, okay? Thank you. Cool. Great.
So thank you everyone for joining with us on this afternoon to celebrate Dalhousie's 200th year and obviously the honorary degree for Dr. Tewksbury. We will have activities like this for Dalhousie's 200th across our campuses. And to find out anything more about that, just visit dal200.ca. And now, please join us for the food part of the presentation just outside the atrium. Thank you.
Save some for me.